Exposed, the haunted strange rules that terrify a retired cop in rural Ohio. What's hidden? Jack Sullivan, a weary 60-year-old retired cop, thought he'd traded the chaos of city streets for the peaceful embrace of Willow Creek. But tranquility slipped through his fingers the moment he moved in. The warm hellos turned into anxious glances and hushed whispers as he stepped onto his porch for the first time. It was then he noticed the eerie decorations plastered on his neighbors' homes. Each cheerful wreath or painted pumpkin seemed to mask a lurking dread, the laughter of children replaced by the chilling hum of silence. Every day seemed to writhe with an unseen tension. Jack peered through the windows of the homes lining the quiet street, but where there had once been life, he now found emptiness. The old stories of families disappearing were more than just folklore, they clawed at his mind. "You've got to follow the rules," the elderly diner patrons murmured, eyes darting as if someone would hear. Jack's heart raced. Rules? In a town like this? The nights became a horror show. He'd lie in bed, the thin walls of his home creaking under the weight of palpable fear. Soft tapping would echo against the glass, a finger brushing against the pane. He'd jerk awake, chest heaving, only to draw back the curtain, revealing nothing but the oppressive darkness. Shadows flitted through the trees lining his backyard, which once provided serenity now suffocated him with dread. Each rustle could be something deadly lurking, just out of sight. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. One evening, Jack stumbled into a personal nightmare when he discovered a dusty family photograph stuffed between the pages of an ancient town archive. His heart hammered as he recognized the smiling faces, neighbors, once good friends, now part of the shadows that surrounded him. Their laughter felt like echoes of a happier world before he uncovered the horrific truth. Beneath those smiles was a bond tied to something far more sinister than he could have imagined. Could these rules be rituals feeding a dark force that had long anchored its grip on Willow Creek? The moment crystallized, a cold knot settling deep in his gut. He had to find out more, armed with the instinct that guided him through years patrolling the city streets. But each rustle from the trees at night sang a chorus of warnings, and the flicker of his lights only intensified the gloom thickening around him. Jack's heart raced. He couldn't deny it any longer. The rules weren't just there for cohesion, they were chains binding him to a fate he couldn't escape. As midnight loomed closer, an anguished wail drifted through the trees. The mournful cry made every hair on his arm stand at attention. Shadows twisted and warped against the moonlight, beckoning him outside. Heart pounding, he clasped the edges of his locked door and turned to look through the peephole. He saw it then, a white envelope, pinned with what looked like slick red blood. "You've been warned. Follow the rules, or join the lost." Jack read the note, panic choking his breath as he realized these shadows weren't just figments of his imagination. They were scouts of a darkness just on the outskirts, waiting for the moment he would slip. With dread pooling in his gut, he knew it was time to choose. Would he confront the evil lurking under the smiles of his neighbors, or be consumed by the very rules that were meant to protect him? The shadows whispered his name, and Jack choked on fear. What awaited him in the dark? Jack's hand trembled as he clutched the white envelope, its smooth surface contrasting sharply against the rough, calloused skin of his fingers. The blood-like stain seeped through the paper, turning his stomach with a sense of irrefutable dread. Swallowing hard, he knew he couldn't stay holed up in his house. Not anymore. The note felt like a reckoning, pulling him back into the heart of Willow Creek's sinister grip. As he unlatched the door, each creak echoed in the silence of the night, louder than his thundering heart. He stepped outside, the chill slicing through his thin pajamas. The street was bathed in a ghastly silver light, the moon illuminating the path ahead. No neighbors peeked through their curtains. No lights flickered on. It was as if the whole town had drawn a breath and held it in anticipation. What do they know? Jack whispered to himself, thoughts racing about the unspoken secrets that loomed above him like storm clouds. He stole glances toward the houses, their darkened windows like watchful eyes, judging him as he took one step after another towards the backyard. The wind picked up, howling through the trees, wrapping around him like fingers from a long-lost ghost. The words from the note echoed in his mind, follow the rules, or join the lost. But what were the rules? He had to find out. He had to know if the stories he heard, stories tinged with fear and sorrow, held any truth. As he neared the line of macabre decorations, jack-o'-lanterns grinned wickedly, their candles flickering like souls trapped within. Jack felt a pull. He remembered the drawing from the town archive. The families had carved their happiness into stone, but deep down, each joyful sigh had been laced with something dark. The laughter of children would carry an undercurrent of something sinister, wrapped within the fabric of that idyllic facade. From the edge of his property, he glanced further into the woods. The trees felt alive, whispering his name in a sibilant chant. He took a deep breath and ventured in. Every step toward the unknown sent chills down his spine. A rustle broke through the trees, a reminder of the dangers that lurked. He could feel it watching. He could feel the darkness probing, studying his every move. Then he spotted it, an old oak, its gnarled branches twisting upwards, seeming to reach for the sky. That tree was different, it wasn't just wood and bark. Jack approached, the palpable tension thickening with anticipation. Something caught his eye, a strange, blackened symbol carved into the trunk, an ancient sigil pulsating with a wicked energy. He raised a trembling hand to trace the lines, and suddenly a flood of memories overwhelmed him. Images of the families who had vanished, shadows creeping across the once happy smiles of his neighbors. They weren't just rules, they were a covenant binding them to whatever lurked beyond the veil of reality. The moment of realization struck like lightning. Hot breath washed over his neck, a chill burrowing into him deeper than the cold evening air. Jack turned sharply, heart racing. But it was too late. The shadows danced closer, closing in around him like a vice. He stumbled back, mouth dry, mind racing. He gasped, "What do you want?" With every heartbeat, the darkness pressed in, and the whispers crescendoed into a deafening roar. Ear-splitting, a cacophony of fears he had long buried came forth, clawing at him. Then, through the depths of darkness and chaos, something shimmered, a glint of clarity. The truth was right in front of him. But he needed more. He needed to know how to break the chains that bound him. Just as he felt he was sinking into the shadows, the ground beneath him trembled. A sudden chill swept over him, and the symbol on the tree pulsed brighter, illuminating the darkness. The air thickened with an urgency he couldn't ignore. He was going to just follow the rules, he was going to rewrite them, but how? Everything hung precariously in the air, a fragile thread between his next decision and a potential descent into madness. What lay behind him was the unknown, but what awaited forward was even darker, and dreadfully alive. Jack took a deep breath, heart pounding wildly. Was he ready to step into the abyss? What would be the cost of confronting this terror head-on? Jack's mind raced, torn between flight and confrontation. He could feel the shadows thickening, the air turning electric as he faced the ancient tree. It loomed over him, its gnarled roots anchoring something far deeper, deeper than he could comprehend. The sigil pulsated, breathing in sync with the rhythm of his racing heart. "What do I do?" he murmured, hands trembling as he clutched the envelope tighter. In the dim light cast by the symbol, he could see the faint outlines of others' figures swirling in the dark behind him, eyes glowing like embers, watching intently. Every instinct screamed for him to run. Yet, he stepped forward, drawn into a darkness that was both alluring and terrifying. As he lingered, he could hear faint whispers weaving through the trees, echoing secrets of lost townsfolk who had vanished without a trace. "Tell us, Jack," they called out, their voices rising and falling like a mournful chant. "Join us." The very breath of the night seemed to chill him further. "No. I won't," he shouted, sounding braver than he felt. But doubt gnawed at him. How many times had he brushed off warnings? The tales of his neighbors had faded into urban legend, the kind that scared children into sleeping at night. What if they were true? What if he was already trapped, Jack felt the ground shift beneath him, the roots of the oak writhing as if awakening from a long slumber. The symbol burned hotter, and suddenly, a memory flashed before him, a girl named Lily, one of those who had disappeared years prior, her laughter haunting his dreams. He had once promised her not to forget, to fight against whatever had taken her. But had he failed? Each moment spent debating turned heavy on his chest. The shadows loomed closer now, a mass of swirling dread. He could almost taste the darkness, bitter on his tongue. He shifted his gaze back to the sigil, realizing it wasn't just a symbol, it was an invitation, an offering. Time slowed, thick like the fog that had settled over Willow Creek all those years ago. Jack's resolve ignited. If I'm rewriting the rules, he thought, they'd have to face me first. He reached out. His fingers brushed the symbol's cool surface, and everything fell silent. It was as if the world was holding its breath. In that moment, he felt a connection to the pulse of the grove, a deep, ancient heartbeat resonating within him, woven tightly into the fabric of the night. What had he unleashed? Light burst forth as the sigil flared with blinding brilliance. Jack was thrown back, muscles straining against unseen forces. A voice roared, echoing from the depths, "You should not have broken the silence." It resonated like thunder, drowning the whispers in a tidal wave of fury. Jack fell to the ground, struggling to regain control, panic clawing at his throat. With every breath, the shadows undulated and shrieked, flaring and retreating like waves crashing on a barren shore. He looked up, heart hammering, scanning for any sign of hope, but the grove twisted and transformed, as if aware of his intent, shifting into a nightmarish version of the familiar. The trees lost their bearings, taking on grotesque shapes, and suddenly, he was surrounded by memories of those who had once laughed here. Was the madness coming for him? The truth was tangled in branches and echoes of despair. Jack could feel the deep-seated agony resonating through the air, mingling with his breath. "What do you want from me?" His voice trembled, teetering on the edge of disbelief and dread. "Your choice," the shadowy figure coalesced from the darkness, voice like icy steel. "Do you seek to learn, Jack? Or do you prefer eternal silence?" Something flickered in his chest, igniting a long-buried courage. He would not succumb to the fear of the unknown. "I want to know," he stated firmly, as if speaking the words would shield him from the horrors of the past, but what lay ahead was more than he bargained for, a truth that could shatter everything he ever believed. Jack took a breath, steeling himself as the shadow neared, threatening to engulf him. And in that moment, he understood. Nothing was as it seemed in Willow Creek. What price would he pay to unearth the buried secrets of the town? Jack's heart raced, pounding like a war drum against his ribcage. The air thickened, each breath weighted with dread and anticipation. The shadow loomed closer, swirling with a life of its own, shaping itself into a figure that flickered like a dying flame. He gasped as recognition pierced through the haze of fear. "Lily," his voice squeaked, barely above a whisper, her eyes, once warm and bright, were now void of life, reflecting a darkness that chilled him to his core. The laughter he had cherished now sounded like a cruel memory echoing back to him. "You came to find me, Jack. But you should have stayed away from here." Uncertainty swirled in his mind like a storm. "But I've always wanted to help you. I couldn't forget," he stammered. The figure lifted a hand, translucent and trembling. "Help? You're too late. We all are. You can't save anyone here." Shivers cascaded down his spine, as the shadows encroached from all sides, whispering taunts of past failures. The grove sang with sorrow, each branch a reminder of souls lost and stories untold. They vanished without a trace. Prowling eyes surrounded him, hungry for despair. "What have you done, Jack?" Sweat beaded on his brow as he clenched his fists, fighting against the rising tide of panic. I just wanted the truth." "Truth?" The voice dropped to a chilling undertone. "This is the truth. We were taken because we were light in the dark. And now, you've opened the door when you should have closed it." The words hung heavy like a noose around his neck. Jack's insides twisted. "What do you mean?" As if summoned by his question, the darkness surged forward, morphing into swirling faces, all the lost townsfolk, their mouths moving in a cacophony of silent screams. Among them, Jack caught fleeting glimpses of familiar faces. Mrs. Hargrove, who used to bake cookies for the entire neighborhood. Young Billy, who had chased fireflies with him in the summer nights. How many lives uprooted! In an instant, he felt the crushing weight of their sorrow pressing down on his chest. "You must choose, Jack," Lily's voice echoed amidst the chaos. "The choice is yours. Walk away and leave us all to our fate, or join us, to understand our pain. Forever." The tree quaked, branches quivering as if they bore witness to some long overdue reckoning. Heart pounding, Jack felt the power of their despair flow through him, threatening to engulf him. Could he truly turn his back on them? But if he stayed, what horror awaited him on the other side of knowledge? "If I stay, what happens to me?" His voice trembled as he pleaded for clarity. A flicker of sadness crossed Lily's face, turning her nearer to a wisp. "You will either become like us or lose yourself in the dark forever," she whispered, the promise of eternal silence lacing her tone. An icy wind howled through the grove, wrapping around him, urging him to flee. His instincts screamed for escape, but a part of him hungered for the secrets buried in this place. What horrors had been hidden here, tied to the mysterious disappearances? Jack closed his eyes, every muscle in his body taut with uncertainty. "What if I refuse?" The shadows writhed in furious indignation. "Refusal? There is no refusal. The choice is but an illusion." He felt the warmth of the sigil beneath his fingers, now thrumming with a relentless urgency. The ground trembled ominously. The shadows erupted around him in a howling fury, their collective anger resonating louder than thunder. Jack stood at the precipice, his heart hammering. Would he leap into the abyss of truth, or withdraw into safety? And then a voice deeper than the ages emerged from that swirling darkness. "Make your choice, Jack, before your time runs out." As the air crackled with anticipation, Jack realized he had only seconds before the darkness closed and what shadows awaited him if he chose to step forward. Fear clawed at Jack's throat, squeezing tight. Time stretched as he wrestled with his choice. The ground beneath him trembled like a restless spirit, and the air crackled with suffocating tension. The specters swirled, faces blending into grotesque masks of agony, their silent screams a heartfelt plea for salvation. He could feel his heart drumming a frantic rhythm. There was no turning back. His breath hitched at the weight of his decision. Every instinct grounded him in the moment, yet he was paralyzed with dread. If he stepped forward, knowledge would come at a great cost. If he turned away, could he live with the weight of his inaction? "Jack!" Lily's voice rose above the chaos, piercing through the fog of uncertainty. "The will to know. It's strong in you. But knowledge comes with a price you may not be ready to pay." Her features flickered, wavering like a candle in the wind. "Don't you wish to understand?" The shadows roared, each lost soul a fragment of a life snuffed out. He could feel their sorrow wrapping around him, tendrils of darkness weaving into his thoughts. What was it they wanted from him? His mind raced with questions, images flashing. Visions of Lily's laughter turned into screams. The sigil's warmth pulsed under his fingertips. It felt alive, urging him. "Just touch it, Jack. Seek the truth," it seemed to whisper. Sweat trickled down his back as he fought the notion. Suddenly, the ground cracked open, revealing an abyss that swallowed light. From the depths rose a low, guttural growl, echoing through the grove. The weeping faces began to merge into a singular mass, eyes blank yet pleading. "Choose, Jack." The voices exploded as one, reverberating in a pitch that rattled his bones. "Step forward and share our burden, or flee and let us suffer alone." He felt a jolt of ancient fear rush through him. What horrors would reveal themselves? What anguish lay on the other side of the veil? Jack couldn't shake the thought of the townspeople. He was connected to them, their lives now etched into his soul. But he didn't know if he was strong enough to bear the weight of their truth. "Do it. Lily urged. Join the dance of shadows, and you will know. Before he could think, instinct took over. He stepped forward. As his foot landed on the crackled earth, a cold wind swept around him, lifting the hair from his neck, whispering secrets lost to time. The sigil's warmth surged throughout his body, pulling him down toward the darkness. But what if it took him? What if it changed him? A flash of terror gripped him. Jack! Lily's hand shot out, slowly withdrawing a shimmer just out of reach. Stay in the light. You don't know what lurks in the depths. You'll never see it coming. But he couldn't look back. He felt something else, the promise of closure, a flicker of hope in the black. With agonizing resolution, he pressed on, ready to embrace whatever waited in the shadows. The darkness surged forward, and in that moment, Jack understood he was a candle in a tempest, flickering on the verge of extinguishment. What awaited him in the shadows felt far worse than he could imagine. Seek me, Jack. Learn my truth. The voice curled around him, tightening like a noose. But remember, once you step into the dark, you may never return. Just as he felt the pull of an unseen force drawing him, the sigil exploded with a blinding light, halting him in his tracks. The figures screamed, their desolation pulsating. Jack felt torn. To move forward was to lose everything, and to move back meant leaving so many behind. In that fleeting moment, as the air crackled with power, Jack understood he'd stepped into history, into the heart of collective grief and horror. Would he find the answers or merely face the deepest fears hidden there? What would he uncover in the shadows that threatened to consume him whole? As he stood on the brink, dread coiled within him tighter than ever. He could only wonder what ritual had he awakened by stepping through the threshold. Jack's feet landed heavily in the abyss, the warmth of the sigil now a distant memory, replaced by a chilling embrace. Shadows wrapped around him, a suffocating shroud that whispered promises of forbidden knowledge. The light from the sigil dimmed, retreating back towards the grove, leaving him in a realm of muted screams and desolate longing that he could hear the growl again, a primal sound that echoed from somewhere deep within the darkness, a warning, a threat. Panic surged through him like ice in his veins as the ground trembled beneath him. The shadows danced around, drawing closer, pressing in from all sides. They were alive, hungry, but for what? Jack! Lily's voice cut through the chaos like a beacon, but it felt warped and distant, as if she were speaking from beyond a great chasm. You have to fight. Remember who you are. But who was he here? He felt stripped of his identity, lost among the tortured faces, each one a fragment of despair. Memories of their lives clashed in his mind, laughter turned to sobs, hope twisted to fear. Images of loved ones begging for escape played like old film reels. What had they gone through? What had he stepped into? The darkness breathed around him, its breath misty and cold, swirling like a storm. He felt the hunger of the shadows, a fierce craving for his dread, his fear. Each heartbeat pulsed in rhythm with the growling, a deep thrum that resonated through his bones. Will you be our vessel, Jack? The voices rose again, a cacophony that wrapped around him, pulling at his sanity. He gasped, feeling their desperation, a welter of emotions flooding his mind. Their unfulfilled desires mixed with his own, a potent cocktail of anguish. What would it cost him to understand? He recalled Lily's warning. The tension roiled in his stomach. The knowledge comes at a price, echoed in his head. What price would he pay for the truth? Jack! Lily's urgency erupted through the shadows, searching for him. You must reclaim your strength. They feed on your fear. He closed his eyes and fought to gather himself. In that instant, he remembered the reason he had come here to begin with, the townspeople, his friends, the ones who believed in him. He gathered the pieces of his resolve, pulling them close, feeling the foundations of his courage rise against the darkness. Leave me! He shouted, voice wavering but fierce. The shadows recoiled momentarily, and for just a heartbeat, silence fell, but then, from the depths of that silence, a figure emerged, a silhouette carved from darkness, ethereal and monstrous. It towered, eyes glowing like molten coals, filled with malice and hunger. The presence radiated power. Jack felt it crush him, weight pressing down like a vice. "You dare defy us?" it hissed, voice dripping like poison. Jack's heart raced, adrenaline pumping through him as he took a step back. He clenched his fists, recalling the warmth of the sigil. "I'm not afraid," he shouted, uncertain, but the declaration rang loud and defiant against the terror. "Your fear is a feast to us," it mocked, slithering closer, causing flecks of despair to swirl around them. Jack's vision blurred momentarily as the edges of reality warped and twisted. But within the chaos, he felt a flicker of defiance. "I am not a vessel for your suffering." An explosion of light erupted as the sigil inside him ignited, battling against the darkness. Shadows screamed, the figures swirling around him in violent chaos. His will surged, pushing back, fighting against the inevitability of doom, yet, as the light pounded against the dark, a new voice whispered a chilling echo, "But what if it is already too late, Jack?" The darkness surged one last time, clawing for something he wasn't ready to give. Was it truly too late for him? As the clash of light and dark reached a fever pitch, Jack could only wonder, would he be consumed, or could he break the cycle of horror ensnaring so many? What awaited him was more than just a choice, it was the key to unraveling the very fabric of his reality. The shadows tightened their grip, but he felt a glimmer of hope, or was it another trap waiting to ensnare him? The light surged, battling desperately against the insatiable dark. Jack's heart thundered in his chest, a primal rhythm that pushed him forward. The gleam from within him flickered against the shadows, brightening the tortured faces around him, each pleading for release. "Fight!" Lily's voice echoed in his mind. He could almost feel her presence wrapping around him, infusing strength into his weary limbs. The suffocating grip of the darkness began to loosen ever so slightly, allowing him to breathe. Yet the monstrous figure in front of him just loomed larger. Its glowing eyes dissected him, piercing through the veil of his resolve. "You think you can defy the inevitable, boy?" it taunted, the malicious whisper slithering like serpents through his skull. The shadows around it trembled, writhing in anticipation, drawn to the taste of his fear. "Believe in something," he shouted, and the timbre of his own voice surprised him. This was not the timid boy the abyss had once cradled. This was a man. "You may want my fear, but you won't have it. Not today." The sigil inside him flared, a surge of warmth that made the cold shadows recoil. Jack felt embers of hope roaring within, pushing away despair and doubt. It felt like a fire igniting in a long-abandoned hearth. He reached for it, channeling the flames into a beam of light aimed straight at the monster. The figure convulsed as the light struck it, its form flickering. Jack pressed on, the shadows boiling around him, unleashing howls of frustration and fury. It wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. Suddenly, a new sensation jolted through his body, a visceral coldness creeping up his spine, an ancient fear he thought he'd buried deep. Images flashed before him, childhood nightmares, long forgotten and unsettling. The fear of the dark whispered familiar words, and for a moment, he hesitated. Doubt slipped in, threatening to suffocate him again. "Jack," the haunting shadows murmured, a symphony of grief and sorrow. "Join us," he recoiled, but then felt the warmth of his memories surge forth. The laughter of his friends. Lily's bright eyes shining with untainted love. The faces of those who depended on him. They needed him. He couldn't let their hope become ashes in the wind. With a primal roar, Jack brushed aside the creeping shadows filling his thoughts. "You will not claim me." A crushing flash erupted from the sigil, a wild tempest of light that washed over everything. The embrace of despair released him entirely, and the darkness convulsed as if caught in a whirlwind. Jack saw it now, the shadows were made of memories, lost moments that hungered for resurrection. They wanted him, but they also feared him. For the first time, he realized he was not just a victim, he was a threat. "No more!" he shouted, pushing against the dark as a violent wind filled the void, swirling his thoughts back into coherence. The monster hissed, recoiling as he grew bolder. Yet in the midst of his defiance, the dark form stumbled backwards. It turned, snarling amidst the shadows that twisted and contorted, a realization dawning in its glowing eyes. "You think you've won?" It spat venomously. "You have no idea what's coming." As if on cue, the ground trembled. Jack felt a tremor deep beneath the abyss, a force stoked by the figure's threat. The shadows shivered in anticipation, merging, twisting, becoming something more sinister, something with a plan, a malice he could barely wrap his mind around. And then, like a curtain lifting, the abyss began to crack open, revealing a glimmering aperture beyond. What lay behind it pulsed with a dark promise, a new terror waiting to be unleashed. "Come, Jack," the voice slunk back into his mind, deep and silky. "You haven't seen all we have to offer." Could he truly escape this? Jack's breath quickened as he took a step towards the aperture, where something hungered for him beyond the veil, a truth, a fate, perhaps more frightening than the shadows themselves. What have I unleashed? His heart raced as the weight of his choices settled over him. The darkness whispered again from behind. Was this a path of enlightenment or a doorway to his ruin? The portal beckoned, and Jack stood at the edge, teetering between the two worlds. The fight was far from over, and what awaited him next could change everything. Jack's breath hitched in his throat as the blackness writhed before him, every pulse of the portal echoing the chaos in his mind. The shadows spilled like liquid night, crashing against the jagged edges of reality. He felt that chilling sensation again, flooding his veins with fear, whispering promises of surrender. He was on the precipice. Beyond the veil, something stirred, a presence ready to emerge. The promise of wisdom lured at him, but wisdom came at a price. What would he have to sacrifice? "Do not run from your fate," the voice coiled around him, its smooth tone a treacherous melody. "Embrace what awaits you. You have the power to change it all." Jack's hands shook, bordering on desperation. "What if I don't want to?" He shot back, the sound of his defiance tinged with doubt. "You have already chosen," it hissed, eyes narrowing. "You cannot unchoose what lies within you. This world is not what it seems. You have been granted insight, now, see." With a forceful pulse, the darkness expanded, drawing him closer. The shadows twisted into shapes, grotesque memories bubbling to the surface. Familiar scenes on repeat, a child lost in a cornfield, screams echoing in a small home, the distant flickering of streetlights casting long shadows on cracked pavement. His tragedies exposed, raw and writhing. The figures danced at the periphery of his vision, taunting him. Jack squeezed his eyes shut, fighting against it. "No. These are not me. They don't own me." But when he opened them, the abyss called louder. He gasped, feeling a pull he hadn't anticipated. The voices of loved ones melded into one dynamic plea, their echoes begging for resolution. The figure before him shifted, morphing into the faces of those he once cherished: Lily, his mother, his fallen partner. All wearing expressions of anguish, the monstrosity grinned wide, its eyes gleaming. "They linger, Jack. They want your light, and they want to relay their truth." A surge of rage ignited within him. "If you think I'll allow you to turn their memories into weapons against me, you're wrong." Armored against impending dread, he forced the light from his sigil. The beam shot forward, scattering the encroaching shadows momentarily. He pressed, pushing against the dark amalgamation that threatened to overwhelm, but the motion only drew the shadows closer. "Your defiance only brings more pain," the deep voice taunted. "Embrace your wrath, Jack. It is the only way forward." With each breath, his skin prickled with anticipation and dread. What lay beneath the portal, both fearsome and alluring? He felt a tearing sensation in his chest, as though he were being split in two. What is it trying to show me? Jack's thoughts spiraled, full of confusion, halted by flashes of primal fear. In an instant, the shadows pushed against him, a tidal wave crashing forward. "All is in the balance," it hissed as the light waned. "Will you let the darkness win?" The ground quaked beneath him, and Jack stumbled backward, his heart pounding violently in his ears. Could he truly trust himself to choose the right path? The portal pulsed again, taunting him, a door into profound knowledge, but also a step into the unknown. Desperation twisted in his gut, and just as he was about to falter, something in him snapped. "No!" he roared. "I will not be consumed." And in that moment of defiance, he took a determined step forward, bracing for whatever awaited him in the depths of that insatiable void. As clarity flickered in the madness around him, he began to whisper a mantra, an oath. But before he could finish, the shadows surged forward in a cacophony of fury, drowning out his voice. All he could do was brace for impact, the unknown rushing in to swallow him whole. What awaited him on the other side? What truths would unravel? This confrontation was only beginning, and Jack could feel the air grow thick with anticipation of what horrors awaited him next. Was he prepared for the ultimate reckoning? Jack felt a wrenching pull as the shadows enveloped him, their cold grasp tightening around his torso like a vice. His heart raced, echoing in the silent void, every slap against his ribcage a reminder of his defiance. But determination flickered like a dying ember. He had stepped into the dark, and now the dark would reveal its own truths. The shadows churned, swirling into a vortex. For an instant, he glimpsed a glimmer of light, a flicker of warmth that felt so familiar. But it vanished in an instant, swallowed whole by a thunderous groan that reverberated through the void. "Jack!" The voice echoed, a haunting familiarity slicing through the chaos. Panic surged. He knew that voice, knew those timbres. It was Lily's voice, desperate and pleading. "Help me, Lily!" Mounted with a new vigor, he fought against the shadowy currents, tearing through layers of cloying darkness. The echo of her voice wrapped around him, a lifeline tethered to reality. "Where are you, Jack?" Her tone shifted suddenly, morphing from desperation to something darker, something almost mocking. "You think you can save me? You're in the same trap." Nothing felt solid anymore. The world twisted around him, each memory colliding with another like a shattered mirror. Faces flickered, his mother, twisted in anguish, while his childhood home loomed beneath a storming sky. He felt their stares as if they were cold fingers pinching his skin. "Jack, you must accept it." Another voice chimed in, a whisper thick with malice. "You are the darkness now." "No!" He screamed into the void, fists clenched. The shadows gorged on his emotions, delighting in his struggle. Suddenly, sharp pain exploded in his chest, a dagger-like reminder that he was alive, battling for his own worth. Jack gasped as flashes of memory flickered and painted the darkness, moments of joy, sorrow, betrayal, each a token of something he thought he could escape, but couldn't. An apparition shimmered before him, a ghostly silhouette of multi-layered sorrow. "To move forward, Jack, you must confront your greatest fears," it whispered. Its voice was a chilling caress that filled him with bleak certainty. "You must show me what you truly desire or forever remain lost." Images swirled, Lily's laughter beneath the autumn leaves, the day they got the dog, a summer night spent under stars. But laced through them were darker memories, the weight of guilt clinging to his heart like millstones, moments he had locked away and thought he'd buried. "Why can't I escape?" he shouted, raw panic pooling within him. The shadows laced closer still, the edges sharp, whispering poisonous truths that tangled in his ears. "Because you carry this with you," the voice bellowed. "You must choose to release it. But it demands a sacrifice, Jack. What will you give?" Sweat trickled down his back as bile climbed his throat. The thought of losing everything threatened to paralyze him. His mind clawed for a way out, but the abyss only deepened, the edges stretching into an infinite void. He felt himself inching towards despair, a puppet tangled in the strings of his guilt. Summoning every ounce of his resolve, he faced the apparition. "I will not surrender. I refuse to be chained by my past." With renewed determination, he conjured light from within, a flare against the deepening night. It surged forward into the shadows, a dawn breaking against despair. The darkness reeled back, hissing in reluctance, but as clarity pierced through, so too did the images shift once more, lurking within the heart of the portal. Behind the light, something began to materialize, a presence not yet clear, but undeniably formidable. Jack. A new voice cut through a blend of his past, hissing through the looming shadow, "You cannot escape. You cannot escape your choices." He felt his heart drop, freezing him in place. Could he face whatever emerged on the other side? The shadows seemed to blend into the silhouette, threatening to merge into one grotesque entity. What awaited him? The cold sweat clung to his skin as he prepared for the confrontation. The final barrier of reality wavered before him, uncertainty reverberating through every fiber of his being, that he knew he was standing on the edge, balanced between light and darkness. But as the figure crested into the light, Jack realized the critical question looming overhead: was he ready for the truth he had long buried? And if he wasn't, could he truly endure what came next? Jack's breath quickened as the figure materialized from the swirling shadow. A tall silhouette cloaked in darkness, its edges flickering like an old movie reel. But as it stepped into the glimmer of light bursting from his heart, the face revealed itself, a haunting visage he had long feared. "Lily," he gasped, voice trembling, her eyes locked onto his, filled with sorrow yet tinged with a glimmer of hope. "You came for me, Jack. But do you truly know what you face?" The shadows surged around them, seeking to pull her back into darkness. Jack felt panic rise, the dread of losing her clawing at his soul. "I want to let them take you. I want to let this place win." The air shimmered like a mirage, filled with echoes of the past, memories of laughter and pain colliding in an overwhelming torrent. "You must confront not just the shadows but the true cost of the truth." Lily's voice, once bright and full of life, now reverberated with the weight of unfulfilled promises. Jack's thoughts clashed. What does that mean? What cost? I thought I could learn, help you break free. Knowledge demands sacrifice, she said solemnly, the shadows clawing at the edges of her presence. To claim it, you must give up what you cherish most. Heart racing, Jack struggled to decipher her words, each syllable wrapping around him like a vice. But I can't lose you again. I should never have stepped into this darkness. You have a choice, Jack, she urged, her figure beginning to flicker, wavering like a dying flame. Knowledge has power, but it can envelop you in despair if you're not willing to pay the ultimate price. He stared into her eyes, searching for clarity among the chaos. The shadows writhing around them seemed to sense his indecision, moving steadily toward the point of no return. What happens if I refuse? Jack demanded, the uncertainty gnawing at him. The thought of living in ignorance was as terrifying as the looming threat of acceptance. Then we fade into nothingness, she whispered, her voice tremulous yet resolute. You will lose everything you sought to protect. The darkness will suffocate your past and your future. The shadows converged, whispering relentless temptations. Memories of those he had lost surged through him, Mrs. Hargrove, warm cookies baked on sunny afternoons, the innocent laughter of Billy, filling the night air, his partner, who had stood beside him through thick and thin. You can keep them. You can win their love back, they taunted. Jack's heart clenched. The weight of their collective sorrow bore down on him, amplifying his pain. But at what cost? He croaked. Only you can answer that, Lily replied, her voice a tragic echo. Step forward, embrace your fears. Only then can you break the cycle. Clenching his fists, Jack felt a surge of rage and determination blossom within him. He thought of the love that had prevailed, the laughter that had once danced in the Willow Creek air. It fueled him. No. I refuse. He shouted defiantly. I want to be your victim. I'm not afraid. I choose to fight for us, for ourselves. Light exploded from within him, sanctified by his defiance. The shadows shrieked, recoiling as if burned by the brightness that radiated from Jack's soul. They writhed and twisted, their dark forms collapsing under the weight of his resolve. Lily's figure flickered, but the warmth in her eyes returned, glowing with pride. You found it. Your strength, Jack. Keep pushing. With every ounce of conviction, Jack stepped forward. The darkness hissed, but his light shined brighter, fracturing the shadows that had gripped him with fear. He could feel the bond of community forging around him, the memories he cherished serving as a shield against despair. The shadows buckled, disintegrating into whispers, fading until only Lily remained before him, a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. You did it. You broke the spell. But what about everyone else? Jack asked, desperate to ensure he wouldn't leave them behind. They're waiting, Jack, Lily smiled, glimmering like the sun breaking on a crisp morning. You've set them free, just as you found your own. Freedom. And then, with a final shimmer, she began to dissolve into light. Remember, Jack, courage reveals the truth. Led them forward into the light. A blinding wave enveloped him, pulling him back into the heart of Willow Creek, where reality met the cover of night, where shadows once dwelled. As he stepped across the threshold, he felt buoyant, lighter than he had ever felt. Jack opened his eyes to find himself standing on his porch, surrounded by familiar faces, the townspeople emerging from their homes as if awoken from a nightmare. Jack! They cried, relief flooding into the space like refreshing rain. You're back. With a renewed heart, he embraced them, tears of joy streaming down his face. You're safe. We'll break these chains together. No more shadows. In this moment, he realized that Willow Creek wasn't merely haunted by memories, it was alive with the resilience of its residents. They were bound by a shared history, not of loss but of hope. A warm breeze washed over them, whispering promises of brighter days. For Jack Sullivan, the battles were not just against shadows outside but the ones within. And he had emerged victorious. With an overwhelming sense of gratitude, Jack looked around him at his neighbors, his friends. They faced the darkness together and had every intention of moving forward. Together, he said firmly, looking each person in the eye, we'll rewrite the story of Willow Creek. And the town, once shrouded in shadows, began to burst back to life, filled once again with laughter, warmth, and moments they would never forget. Jack could finally breathe. And he knew, for the first time, they were truly free. Now that you've journeyed with Jack through the shadows and discovered the truth of Willow Creek, you need to subscribe now to catch every thrilling moment we have in store for you next. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep the stories alive. Flood the comment section with your reactions, your theories, and let us know what you think happened next for Jack and the town. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. It's time for everyone to uncover the truth.